Hey everybody, it's Penny, and I'm back with another alumni interview. This is Lara, and she trained with me back in 2020, and I'm bringing her on at this time because her story is really a beautiful example of how you can take hypnosis, enmesh it with what you already do, and it opens up insights and opportunities to create impact and change in ways that you wouldn't otherwise imagine. So, I'm not going to be talking a lot through this whole thing. Going to get started here just simply by asking Laura, um, what piqued your interest in even taking a hypnosis certification? What was that instigation that got you going down that path?
Yeah, hey Penny, hey everyone. Because that was 2020, the year of shutdowns, COVID. So back in those days, I was more of a body worker, and a lot of my work was physical touch, person to person, and I needed to start stepping away from that. I knew that if I was going to now start impacting more people, if I needed to, well, yeah, in times of lockdown where we're no longer allowed to see people, I had to do something. Um, because you'd specifically taught pain management hypnosis in those days too, I'm guessing, well, you still do. So because you did a lot with pain management hypnosis, and that's what my clients were generally going through. So I was specializing in pain management. It just made sense to do that for my clients when I couldn't actually see them. And that was, yeah, basically that from there.
Yeah, so you were doing kinesiology and
Yeah.
basically wanting to pivot at that time.
Well, I was doing more massage work and
Okay.
kinesiology. Kinesiology was a way of me, I would say, hitting the nerves. So I dealt a lot with people with psychosomatic type pains or chronic pain injuries where you can't actually step away from the pain anymore. So you can have these chronic conditions where it's just not going to stop. Like you've got bones hitting nerves, you've got like severe muscle denigration. You can have autoimmune diseases that are attacking your muscles now. And as beneficial as massage can be, kinesiology was just a different way of coming into the body and even asking permission from the body because you'll have people that can't actually relax into the table.
Right.
Um, yeah. So with hypnosis then, and then coming in from the aspects that we learnt from you, it helped me a lot to then branch out from what I was already doing in the way that I started understanding how many times we actually put people into hypnotic states without realizing. Um, so with kinesiology, it's like when you do a kinesiology setup and you're relaxing people and you're getting out their problems, that's essentially what we're doing at the beginning of hypnosis when we do an induction and a little bit of your like questioning beforehand. So you could see the correlations between the two there. So kinesiology then for me, I recognized was just a physical hypnosis, and it then made my kinesiology practice even better because of the way when you have that structured way of dealing with the subconscious, which kinesiology doesn't quite do. Um, you can now actually get in quite deep and start making like better shifts. Like you're not just relying on almost fate to a point. Like you're actually now going in with directed shifts with a point and like an objective of how to help your client more clearly.
Yeah, it sounds like there's energy and intention that gets put in behind it. In terms of the training itself, how do you feel that set you up to be able to have those insights and to integrate it into what you were doing?
Um, it set me up massively because when you come into kinesiology and you do a setup, like the basic setups that we do in hypnosis, like, when we do regress people back and we are doing those setups in those moments to actually tackle those moments, you can now put that into kinesiology practice at the beginning, um, to hit the point straight on. Like, we're now finding the actual root cause. You're bringing that moment to life, and it's almost like, if anyone's done soul retrieval work, it's almost like doing soul retrieval work where you are finding that part of yourself. And I'm not sure, like, because so many people practice kinesiology differently, but the way I do kinesiology is you do go find parts of yourself and you bring it back. And with the hypnosis that we do, the beginning of bringing that in to then set up the stage, and you bring people back into those times and those places to then now actually walk through it and help you guide you in healing it. It did a lot. Um, Especially now that you have I guess you learn gentler ways on how to communicate to people while they're in that state as well. And while we go in there without a script, you almost do have a script in the way that you have to think of how we like pattern our words, um, or like pattern our sentences so that it's more easily, I would say then you'd have less client resistance. When you have like the most important thing is like, overcoming client resistance. And when you learn how to overcome a lot of your clients' resistance just by simply taking out or putting in a few different words, it massively changes what you can achieve now and how deep you can go.
It does. And one of the things we talk about in the training is how your interaction with the client literally starts with the first time that they hear about you. And that entire process up until they meet with you becomes a part of what you're calling the setup. But we basically call it that pre hypnosis period, the pre hypnosis interview. Um,
Yep.
how, was that a part of, because we don't speak a lot of language patterns or things like that in the actual formal training, but we do have a process of questions that we ask that opens people up to exploring and sharing rather than us directing what they say. Is that something you feel you took into it?
Yeah, that was definitely something I took into it. I think the other part is like, so like we're talking about how like you start as soon as people hear you, and when you already have your own other modalities, you're already building rapport there too. And it's so much easier working with clients that you already work with that know you. So when it came to, so I'd had a lot of clients that were unsure about hypnosis, didn't know how it would happen for them, whether or not it was for them, what it would do. And because I was already in a lot of other fields, like with kinesiology, massage, and body work, um, they were able to relax a lot easier and quicker. And we had that rapport there, um, where it was now, like, because I knew them on a level of what was holding them back, it was a lot easier than to go into hypnosis session, knowing what we wanted out of that hypnosis session, and then how to talk to them in a way that they would be more receptive. And the hypnosis training, when we were looking at like some of those language patterns and the way that we ask those questions, even just as a practitioner in myself, it helped ask questions that would produce better answers. Like, it's all about asking the right question. And it did help me ask a lot of the right questions because, especially when you deal with pain management hypnosis and just pain management in general, if it's quite a chronic condition, you can kind of see where the cracks are in their thinking that exacerbates that pain. And you also then start to also identify their triggers, what actually makes their pain worse, especially if it's like personal or emotional triggers, because that's a big thing with chronic hypnosis. So the questioning around all that, I'm trying to picture it, more of a picture person. So the questioning around all that really started, I guess it started to paint a picture of that person and their past a lot easier. And then you kind of leave it to them in a way where you're like, when you're ready to start looking at that, we can go into hypnosis and
Yeah.
try and rescript that. But right now, like, I'm seeing where it's coming up. I'm making you aware that it's coming up. And then we'll go there when you're ready to go there. And giving them that time to just sit with it and allow it brings a much more powerful session than if they were trying to, like, hesitantly approach.
I'm absolutely sure dealing with people with chronic pain, so many people, because it's such a physical sensation, even when dealing with psychosomatic issues, it's such a physical sensation in terms of perception. Um, there can be a lot of resentment around the emotional impact and the impact of the past, because a lot of times people with especially psychosomatic pain here in the US, there's a lot of gaslighting, especially around things like fibromyalgia. So you are doing one-on-one hypnosis work with your clients, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, so I do some one-on-one hypnosis clients. It's kind of funny because when you have them in that sort of relaxed state of hypnosis, especially when you're massaging, you just put them there anyways. And you've got to ask for permission. Like, I will adamantly say, always ask permission. So even before a massage session, I'll now ask for permission because you can be massaging them. And massaging is one of those weird, like one of those beautiful things where it can just relax people enough to just speak their mind. And there will be times where they can get quite angry and they will get quite emotional, especially when they do have the chronic pain management. Like, you hit a sore spot and they would just be so angry and upset about it. And I'd turn around to them and I was like, would you like me to hypnotize you around this? And then we just start, you almost just start talking, but then you can then go straight into one of your sessions. Um, and just figuring out, where does this anger come from around this like point. And because especially when we do like our time tunneling technique, you going back, you just do it straight on that point that you hit. And just, and emotionally they're already there and they see it and you can now work with it. So while you're doing the body work, you can also do the hypnosis work at the same time. And the amount of release that I get out of people at that point
Yeah.
is phenomenal. Like, so I've had people come in with pain after a passing away of a loved one. And it helps a lot in that moment of just processing that. And then I had another lady who came in where her pain was, yeah, it was from a lot of anger. She was angry actually at an external situation and she was taking it out on herself. So when we went back into that and we did the whole forgiveness exercise, and it was kind of wonderful because she first walked in saying, I just want to be able to move tomorrow. Like, she walked into a massage saying, I just want to be able to move tomorrow. Do whatever you need to do. I just want to move. And I saw her again then like 4 months later, and she was actually now saying, I want to live life. And she actually had a future now. She could actually see a future and plan a future. And just shifting people with both hypnosis and in their pain in their bodies in the one session. It's powerful.
Yeah. You highlight one of the things that, in your own way, you've highlighted one of the things that I talk about is when you understand a process and you get the principles of that process, it's very adaptable to what you're doing in the moment. And I think that's absolutely beautiful because I find that forgiveness work, it's the holy grail of the whole process. John Sarno wrote a book called The Mind Body RX. And he says that most autoimmune and pain conditions, in his practice as an internal medicine doctor, he's like, it's repressed rage. It's
Yeah.
repressed rage in the body. Where do you see that to what degree do you see that in your practice?
I see it a lot to the point that I started personal training for people to get out that rage because we had our own little pillow thing that we do in our hypnosis sessions. And I was like, no, I'm going to make this into something. So, yeah.
Yeah, you have
And
to adapt it to what your clients do. I can't do what I taught in class with my clients. They're spiritual people. They're not going to express that physical expression of that anger in that way. So you're having them work out.
yeah, I ended up because I was exercising myself at the time and I actually realized how much like people like myself and others, we use exercise as a form of emotional release again. And I was like, oh my God, we could totally capitalize on this. Like, imagine being hypnotized and working out on your stuff in a hypnotic state while you're working out. And I did it to quite a few people where it was just basic exercises where we call them ball slams. And I was lining up three balls in front of this lady. So there was like a light, medium weight, and heavy. And I said, how big's your issue? Like, and because she was in that state already, she was already pent up, she was angry. And I was like, how big is your issue? And she was like, oh, it's about a medium or it's a large. And then we got her to then just slam it out, like doing the ball slam. So it's like you pick up this heavy ball above your head and you slam it down into the ground as hard as you can. And I do that with her until she was satisfied that she'd gotten that out. And then I said, okay, next, like, next thing, the first thing that pops into your mind, where are we going next? And she would then, like, guide the session in that way. And when we finally hit into like our like sensitizing point, or like our root cause of it all, um, that's then when I got her to actually pick up the ball or her issue and made her hug it and forgive it again. And then we went through a forgiveness exercise there. And it was kind of almost different because when you have someone laying down and imagining it, um, it's a little bit different now when they hold something. It almost makes it real for them at the same time too. And I guess we just got to be really cautious there that they don't now tie, I guess, the weighted slam ball to the person that they were with. But it was just a moment now of they got out that emotion now. They got out that energy, especially if it was quite a physical expression, and they managed to work through the forgiveness of that. And yeah, that's where now we're starting to tie hypnosis into our daily movements, but also in those moments where we're just zoning out and realizing how powerful those zone outs can be.
Yeah. And how has integrating hypnosis into what you do, how has that impacted your business as a whole?
I've created my own niche. Like it's impacted me in a way that no one does what I do. Um, Especially with the way I do it, the modalities that I do. So with massage and PT, it's like find me a massage therapist and a PT that will do hypnosis with you while you're actively in a session. Like, so it it's yeah, like no one does what I do, and people now come to me because I'm the only person that does it. Like, well, I'm sure there will be probably other people out there
Yeah.
that can, but I actively put it out there that, like, guys, this is what I do. You're not going to find anything like it. So, especially where I was, because people knew that exercise was for mental health. And I was like, yeah, I do a lot around mental health, especially in the hypnosis field and everything like that. So, we can tackle it all in one session. And yeah, it put me in a place where people will specifically ask for me because I'm the only person that can do what I do.
I think that's amazing. And, just in marketing in general, people say you don't have a niche, you are the niche. And the whole idea of blue ocean, red ocean, I mean, your blue ocean is so big, you're like hanging out in the Pacific all by yourself. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. So, where do you see yourself taking this in the future, because you have some things cooking. I don't know how much is for public
No, no.
awareness yet,
Oh,
but you
well,
have
it's
things cooking, don't you?
yeah. So in 2 weeks' time, we're finally launching it because I did keep it in behind the shade, like in the background there for a little while. Because I told a couple of people, and they kind of try to run off with it. And this is where I got a little bit nervous when someone ran off with my idea. And but then I realized they didn't actually do all the study in the modalities. Like they didn't know hypnosis. So they didn't actually quite be able to pull off what I did because like they knew like CBT and psychology work and things like that, but they didn't know the hypnosis work to actually get in deep to actually capitalize on those PT things. So I am actually coming out in a couple of weeks' time where I'm releasing weightlifting for emotional release. And we're also doing a therapeutic group training session where you actually start off with a hypnosis session or an induction to kind of put people into that state now already. And then we take them through these really specifically coordinated exercises that I've linked up back to like the chakras. Because we're looking at the muscle work, we're looking at chakra work. That's bringing in the kinesiology work now into that. I've worked with a couple of experts in the field with corrective exercises and also in the spiritual field of like with kahuna. So kahuna massage that I do here. Um, we learnt that when you massage out a muscle, you massage out a memory. Like quite literally, they say when you finally relax, you remember. And they say that's because when you've relaxed your muscles, your memories have come back. So, and that helped greatly again, because that was in line with what we do with our hypnosis. So bringing all those in together into one big session, like healing session now of like, so you do your hypnosis, you do your workout, and then you do like a closing off hypnosis, and you see what journey you've gone through. And
Mhm.
through that, it's almost now building up a resilience. Um, because what we're doing, it's like, so you have people with that do like your yoga practices, and you got your yoga practices that are quite meditative. I know yoga can be quite strength building, but I found it was more sedative. In a way, like, so a lot of people in the energy fields or that deal with spiritualism in that way, we tend to be just turning things off. We're turning off our past, we're turning off a trigger, we're turning off of just sedating, turning off, relaxing. That's all that's how I feel a lot of practices tend to come into this.
What I would
And
call bypassing, is that what you
yeah,
mean?
it could be bypassing as well, but it's more we're not building. And so in Kahuna, like we talk about mana, which is like your internal power, and then we go manava, which is like the power of now. And it's like there's nothing that really builds that. And so then when we now go into a PT session or into the physical workout of the chakras and everything like that, we're now looking at building up that mana in each chakra. We're putting it into the resistance training without it totally being triggered, but we're now building resilience and building internal power. And yeah, that's where the hypnosis comes in with like that power of suggestion. Simply.
That's amazing. And you went on and you did the pain management training, um, that I have as well. You were telling me before we hit record, you were shocked and amazed at how it could completely cut off pain signaling. And you actually had to take one client that needed to have some degree of awareness of their physical body, and you actually had to reverse that. It was so powerful. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my client, she has a very chronic condition, which is ankylosing spondylitis. So it's a condition where she's just forever chronically going to be in pain. The spinal bones are actually now collapsing down on her nerves, and there's not a whole lot you can do around pain management for those conditions. So during the times of COVID, she was at a point now where her physical therapy, so she used to see a physio twice a week and she'd see me once a week. She'd do a lot of hydrotherapy. That was all cut off from her. And she was in a world of pain just because she just couldn't do what she normally did to keep herself moving and out of it. So the hypnosis, we went in, just to subdue it. I was hoping to bring it back to where she was before she did all the physical movements and had the body work done. And it turned out that yeah, she ended up just cutting herself off because she was so happy and thrilled about it. And I've seen it a couple of times where people can get so overexcited about the fact that they can now live again and they can move again and not feel pain that they overdo themselves. So,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, and in times like that, if they overdo themselves and they really overdo it, you just got to bring it back. You
You,
have to because
you have to. They'll
they're doing
hurt
more damage.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah, and like we were saying too, like there's a reason why the pain is there, especially for such conditions like that. There is a reason why it's there. They need to be very aware. Like you can put in all the suggestions in the world, but sometimes it's like even if you do subdued it a little bit. So there was a point there where I said it will come back when something happens. And when it came back, it came like super strong. Like it was debilitating now. So it went from switching off to all of a sudden she just was like floored by it. And I was like, we can't just keep going in and out of these big wave patterns because now it's like you start living in that world of uncertainty of when's the next one going to hit. And for her, unfortunately, it was just one of those things where hypnosis may not be the pain
Yeah.
management of hypnosis may not be the thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's one of the reasons that I have not added a specific module for teaching people to manage their pain post surgery, because post surgery pain is very important. And if you don't have the clinical knowledge to know, you know, and to remember to give those clients that suggestion that it's only the incisional pain, like you have relief from incisional pain, because you don't want to cut everything off. And I don't teach clients glove analgesia either, because I don't want them shutting off pain their doctor needs to know about. So I have limits around what I do. It almost sounds like in that situation, like a remote control to just be able to dial it back but not turn it off would be helpful. But it sounds like you guys have found that place that is working for her. If there's someone out there that is thinking about hypnosis and they're in some other profession and they're curious if hypnosis training would even be something relevant to what they do, what would you say to them?
Oh, it's easy. It's what's holding your client back. When you look at that, everything that holds your clients back is literally going to be subconscious. You're
Yeah.
going to do some sort of hypnosis. Like you will be
Yeah.
doing some part and parcel, whichever part of the process. Like I guess you'll be able to, like when you are in those other professions, you can see exactly where we're going. Well, if you're just a hypnotist in yourself, you kind of have to go on that hypnotic journey to then, like, go through all the stages and phases of the hypnosis. But if you're in another profession, sometimes you can go through the hypnotic journey. Sometimes you can just go straight to the point because you already know exactly what's holding them back and you know where it is. There's no
Yeah.
point to go digging out. And the fact that your client had enough rapport to open up to you about where those points were or where those pain points were is probably in itself another form of hypnosis that you unknowingly did. So capitalize on it.
Yeah. I mean, even in a position of corporate where you're speaking leadership, there, we talk about, at least in the self study, it's talked about how people in positions of leadership or that we perceive have more authority, we automatically become more suggestible, even if we aren't
Yep.
in that hypnotic state. And anytime someone becomes emotional, they're in a hypnotic state. And knowing, being able to just understand what happens, I think transforms the entire interaction. At least for me,
Yeah.
it did.
I did it with one of my clients, so it was a little bit off topic. I was actually giving her hints. She did a lot. She actually worked in a childcare center, and there are times where she needed it. Like, so kids sometimes need to be assessed for uh, for all your disabilities, like like your autism, and your ADHD, and stuff like
Right.
that. And it's really hard to get kids um, like in a state where they can be assessed. And we kind of used it then, or we use it to help put suggestions in them because they're looking at these teachers. So it's like even funny, like you look at students to their teachers because teachers are in such a powerful position. It's like you really got to watch what you say. And I was just like, so you think of like, we always say kids' minds absorb like a sponge. And it's like, that again is a state of hypnosis.
Yeah.
And kids are just in walking hypnotic states.
Until
Like,
that critical factor is formed at 7 or 8. Yes, indeed.
yeah, so it phenomenally changed not only how, like, I approach situations, but for me, it also changed me as a parent, realizing, like, so, like, I guess for the kids, I will have a lot of scripted, like, I almost like have scripted sayings now that I say to them. So one of them would be like, I look at my kids and I say, don't let other people's thoughts and fears become your thoughts and fears. And they don't quite know it yet. And it's like after we do what we've done, it's like how that's going to affect them in the future. So it's like I'm sneaking in little things now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's amazing because definitely even even not learning the because we do basic and advanced in the
Yeah.
elite hypno pro training. It's basic and advanced, but even at a very basic, when you understand the power of words and how people are in and out of trance, you start to think, oh my God, what did I say to my kids? But when you learn the advanced techniques that we've talked about, it makes no right unless someone specifically has trauma. And I want you to share your perspective on this. Unless someone specifically has trauma, it makes no rhyme or reason which words stick and influence us. Sometimes it's the most benign stuff.
Yes. So I'm just thinking, yeah, like the most benign things can stick. And it's almost like I had to come down to myself because I remember when I walked out of hypnosis and when we did learn things like age regression, I felt so guilty at the potential because when we when we put other people into hypnosis, you kind of see where they've picked up their stories from. And it can be the smallest thing that's so innocent as a parent to do that it's hard not to feel guilty if you saw it. And for one of my clients, it was simply being born in the way that her mum had a difficult labor. And as she was being born, her mum was shouting out, I can't do this. So then she's now walked through life saying, I can't do this. And it's like you now have to do a lot of self-forgiveness work, but also know that you didn't know that she could pick that up. And that's where I now turn around and tell people, I believe honestly that that is the challenges, the lessons, the karma that we've come into this life to learn. Because if she wasn't going to, like, 101 people can be born with mothers and difficult labors, but for some reason this one person picked it up, but the other 100 didn't. And so then that's why I say to people, it's like we can't control what we can and can't pick up. It's more, and when we're talking about early childhood, I think it's more just what are we here to learn? And that's where I get really spiritual. It's just like you picked up this lesson, but that other person didn't. And then even when it came to my body work, so those little like short strapped handbags that people put over their
Mhm.
shoulders.
Yeah.
Some people will get pain in their shoulders and some people won't. And I say, well, what does that mean to you? What's coming up for you around that? Because again, like 100 people can put a short handbag on their shoulder and like, 10 can walk away with pain and the other 90 won't. So what's happening in your stories? And you'll find there can be physical reasons, like, like a physical weakness, but there can also be what are we emotionally carrying? And now we start looking at that emotion. And the only way you're going to get through that is through a hypnotic state.
Yeah. I don't I mean, we could go so many different directions with this conversation. I know we're going to have to wrap it up soon, but that spiritual piece, that's something that has come into the training, not from a woo perspective, but just from that higher perspective. We're all here on our own journey, and no one intentional. Well, for the most part. No one intentionally does something, to someone else. And I think it's a beautiful metaphor you use with the handbag, because pain is a representation of something that we need to address, and it's not always physical. Pain is
Definitely.
literally a symptom, it's a signal that something's wrong. Please help me.
Yeah. And the other way I look at it is, so when we talk about that spiritual overlay on the body, I look at it is our body is our subconscious mind. I've always believed that. It is. So when I read people's bodies, you can actually already tell a lot of their stories on how they're carrying themselves. Because like we'd have patterns like, they say put your back into it, you're trying to stand up stronger. And that's a lot to do with confidence. And then you see the people that hunch over because that's your typical stance for depression. And you can see how that can physically come out as well. So it's almost like the body is very much showing what the subconscious mind is trying to put out, whether or not we try and hide that or not.
What will be, will be. I mean, in terms of the investment, any hesitation around the investment? Do you feel that your investment in the program has come back to you?
Oh, definitely. It came back to me within like what, the first week. So no, it came back to me because it allowed me to work in a different sphere too. It also allowed me to work more internationally as well. It allowed me to go outside of the clinic but stay in the clinic. Is
I,
another way I could say it too.
I love that. And now it's opened many more doorways. You're literally a niche of one. And that, I think that says a lot. And there are a lot of areas that are underserved from the perspective of having this deeper understanding of the mind and the influences of the mind and how things can be woven together. Were people in your profession, were they surprised at what you've done? How has it been received? I know you mentioned someone, a couple of people may have taken your idea, but they don't have the secret sauce.
Yeah, it was in that way, I guess it was really well received. I think it was the other way too of we realized that we're just in a world of emotions and now we're actually dealing with it. So how you deal with it's going to be one way or another. Like I've seen people try and do tapping techniques. Um, but it's kind of like, what are you doing in tapping? You're again just trying to get people into a state of hypnosis. Yes, just tapping onto like meridian points and meridian lines, but are you really getting in there? I guess in a way. Like I know you don't have to be in a state of hypnosis to be acupunctured, for example, but you sometimes need to be in that state of hypnosis to receive. Um, so as far as the rest of my with modalities and professions that I come in across, it's we know mental health in the health industry is massive. The mental health industry needs so much reconstructing and everything like that. And I know in the PT, personal trainer field, um, the we were all shut down in Australia here because we're actually not considered a health field. We're considered entertainment. And everyone's like, well, how does personal training become entertainment? And they were like, well, anyone can lose weight with or without like professional trainer or anything like that. So that what we're actively trying to do now is bring personal trainers into a health field, and the only way we can do that is through mental health. And I was like, well, if we're going to start tackling mental health, we're not here to be counselors or anything like that, but you know what, we can start looking at how we're impacting our clients during our sessions, during our PT sessions, recognizing when they're in a hypnotic state and actually letting them work that out. And when you have like those basic principles of hypnosis, we're now able to work it out in a way that is um, more defined. Like, we've, so I like to joke around that in CrossFit, you see it a lot where people, CrossFit workouts can be quite long and arduous and it can be mentally breaking. And I said, the funny part is now that I've done hypnosis and all the other weird and wonderful things I've done, I can now make you cry in a workout on command. Um, like I said, it was a bit of a joke that you'd find people in the corner of the room crying. And it's like, I
Yeah.
can now do that on command, but not only can I do that on command, I can now work with it.
There you go.
Yeah. I can now do something about it. I
Yeah.
can now take you through that emotion and we can now sort it out.
Yeah. That's the big thing I say about coaching. In coaching, you can bring people to insight, but if you can't work with that insight to take it somewhere, it's wasted.
Yeah. And hypnosis was almost like that key where it's like, oh, look, we found this inside, or we found the block. Now, what do we do with it? And normally, like, if you don't have subconscious training, normally you're like, oh, like, go read a book or go find something, like, try and get that understanding from somewhere. Well, now with hypnosis, like, no, we can put you into a sphere, a place, a space
Yeah.
that's like, safe, and we can actually now try and work through it.
Yeah. That moment of insight is where you can lay down a new belief, a
Yep.
new model of reality, a new perception. You go read a book, it's gone.
Yeah. Yep. And that was the weird way too, because then I tell people like they say, "What do you do?" And I was like, I literally change people's realities.
Yeah.
When you give someone hope, you essentially change the foundations of how they saw the world. That is a change in reality, and now they will live again. And yeah, that's a lot of what we do.
Yeah. That's what fuels you to get up and go every day, isn't it?
Pretty much, I love it. I love being the Mad Hatter, as I say.
Yeah. Um, well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk about your experience with training, how you've been able to integrate that into what you do. And I love that you're in this really unique place where no one else does what you do. If people want to connect with you and learn more about what it is that you're doing with uh, physical training, the lifting of the weights, the expression of the emotions, that kind of thing, where can they find you?
Yep, so they can definitely find me online. So I'm on Facebook and then I've got my website. So that's kundalinifitness.au. At the moment, I'm only really practicing like as a personal trainer outside of Australia, but a lot of my mentors are actually over in the US. So I do hope to get over there soon and work alongside with them. And then we've also got a retreat coming up in Malta later in the year, where we now start bringing more of the Polynesian side of things. So we're looking at like, your kahuna and your lomi lomis and bringing that body work into it, because that was a very pivotal, like spiritual mind body. So bringing into the hypnosis into that side of things as well is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, so I'm around. But
Yeah,
yes, so kundalinifitness.au is where I am.
beautiful. We will be sure to have that information for people. Thanks so much, Laura.